How to know when it's time to divorce your wife? That has to be one of the heaviest burdens a man can ever carry. And if you're listening to this, chances are you've been carrying that weight in silence for a very long time. It's a quiet, gnawing feeling that sits in your gut during the morning commute and keeps you staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m. You're not here because you want an out. You're here because you're looking for the truth, even if that truth is uncomfortable. I know exactly where you are. You feel like a failure, don't you? You feel like you're breaking a promise you made to your younger self, to your family, and perhaps to God. You're exhausted from the walking on eggshells routine where every conversation feels like a potential landmine and every silence feels like a very heavy fog. You've probably heard people tell you to just tough it out, or that marriage is hard work, as if you haven't been out in the trenches working yourself to the bone already. Maybe you've heard the whispers or felt the judgment from friends who see you with the perfect life, the perfect couple on social media and assume you're just being selfish or going through a midlife crisis. They don't see the coldness behind closed doors. They don't feel the loneliness of sitting right next to someone on the couch and feeling 1,000 miles away. Let me tell you about Alex. This is a man I know very well. Alex was the definition of a good provider. He worked 60 hours a week, coached his son's soccer team, and never missed a mortgage payment. But inside his own home, Alex was a ghost. He lived in a beautiful house that felt like a high-end prison. His wife, Christine, was a good person, but the us part of their life had evaporated years ago. Alex used to tell me that the hardest part wasn't the fighting, it was the nothingness. The first real sign Alex noticed, and the first sign you need to acknowledge, is sign number one: sustained sexual rejection. We're not talking about a dry spell because of a new baby or a stressful project at work. We're talking about 3 months or more of a sexless marriage where intimacy has been replaced by excuses or worse, total indifference. In a prestige marriage, physical intimacy isn't just a perk. It is a core currency of the partnership. According to data from the CDC and various health sociological studies, sexual health and marital satisfaction are deeply intertwined. When that connection is severed for a sustained period, the biological and emotional bond that separates a marriage from a friendship begins to shrink and vanish. If you've reached a point where you've stopped asking because the rejection hurts less than the no, the foundation is crumbling. Alex lived that for 2 years. He felt like a roommate who paid the bills, a glorified ATM with a pause. This leads directly into the second sign, sign number two: compromised emotional safety. Do you feel safe in your own home? I don't mean just physical safety, though that is paramount. I mean, can you be your true self without being mocked, belittled, or ignored? Alex realized he had stopped sharing his wins at work because Christine would find a way to make it about her or dismiss it entirely. He stopped sharing his fears because he used them as ammunition in later arguments. When your home is no longer a sanctuary but a courtroom where you are always the defendant, the marriage has lost its soul. You shouldn't have to brace yourself before turning the doorknob at the end of the day. Sign number three: functional roommate status. This is where the house works, but the marriage doesn't. The kids are fed, the chores are done, the calendar is synced, and you're both incredibly busy being a family, but you're not a couple. You're two business partners running a very small, very stressed out corporation called the household. There's no flirting, no shared jokes, no looking forward to a night alone together. In fact, you might find yourself staying late at the office or volunteering for extra errands just to avoid that hollow silence at the dinner table. You're efficient, sure, but you're dead inside. Now, I want to give you something you can do today to get some much needed clarity. It's called the 48-hour observation audit. For the next 2 days, I want you to stop initiating. Stop initiating the touch, stop initiating the deep conversation, and stop being the one to bridge the emotional gap. Just be polite, be a gentleman, and observe. Does she step into that vacuum to meet you, or does the distance simply grow? This isn't a game. It's a strategic assessment of whether there's still a we or if you're the only one holding the rope. This audit often reveals the reality of the power dynamics in your home faster than any therapy session ever could. If that audit reveals a void, we have to look at the fourth sign. Sign number 4, zero growth potential. In a high value life, growth is everything. If you're a man who is evolving, reading, building, getting fit, sharpening your mind, and your wife is committed to remaining exactly who she was 10 years ago or worse, resents your growth, you may have a terminal problem. If she refuses to acknowledge there's an issue, refuses counseling, or insists that this is just how it is, then you're looking at your future. And if that future looks exactly like today, can you live with that for another 30 years? We recently discussed this in one of our videos, Time to Divorce, the 5 stages of marital collapse, how to stop the clock, where we break down that final stage before the point of no return. If the currency of growth has been spent, the value of the partnership is gone. The final sign, the one that truly tells you when it's time to divorce your wife, is sign number 5, absolute internal conviction. This isn't a flash of anger during a fight. This isn't a "I'm done" shouted in the heat of the moment. This is a cold, calm, calculated executive decision. It's the moment Alex sat in his car in the driveway and realized he wasn't angry anymore. He wasn't even sad. He was just finished. When you reach this level of conviction, the emotional turbulence settles into a quiet clarity. You realize that staying is actually more damaging to your children, your legacy, and your soul than leaving would be. You've done the work, you've checked the boxes, and the math just doesn't add up anymore. By the way, you should check out another video here called How to Fix Your Relationship with Your Wife. 5 rules I wish I knew earlier. Alex eventually chose to leave. It wasn't easy. It was the hardest thing he ever did. But 6 months later, he told me he felt like he could breathe for the first time in a decade. He became a better father because he was no longer a shell of a man. He regained his edge. He took accountability for his part in the collapse. But he also had the self-respect to say no more to a life of quiet desperation. There's a lot of social pressure to save the marriage at all costs. But what is the cost? Is it your mental health, your physical vitality, your ability to lead? If you're a man of prestige, you understand that your most valuable asset is time. Spending your remaining years in a relationship that drains you rather than fuels you is a poor investment of the life you were given. I want you to think about the people involved here. I want you to be honest with yourself, looking back at Alex and Christine, or even looking at your own situation. What do you think the other side could have done differently to change the outcome? Was there a moment where a single shift in attitude or a single honest conversation could have saved it? Or was the decay already too deep? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that in the comments. Does the responsibility of saving a marriage fall equally on both, or does one person usually carry the burden until they break? This is Ola, Man of Prestige, your favorite relationship and marriage coach. If you enjoyed this, smash that like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs it. Be a part of the Prestige family. My wife Lola and I have written 2 powerful books, Get My Marriage Back and Number 1 Red Flag, yours free at manofprestige.com. For personal coaching, send me a WhatsApp request for consultation to +1 732 305 8577. Stay tuned for more. Your journey to love and prestige starts here.